"Marry me, or I lose everything," Mountain Man told the fat girl, but it became real love. "Marry me, or I lose everything." The words sounded ridiculous even to him as they fell into the dust-choked silence of the land office. Calhoun Cal Bridger stood in front of the clerk's desk like a storm packed into human shape. 6'4", broad as a barn door, shoulders and chest built from years of hauling buffalo hides and wrestling with the worst of the frontier. His shirt strained over thick muscle, his beard was dark and wild, and his green eyes burned with a mix of fury and something close to panic. Across from him, the land clerk adjusted his spectacles and tried not to look nervous. "Mr. Bridger, I don't write the rules," the clerk said. "I just enforce them. The Homestead Act gives you 160 acres as long as you live on it and improve it. But here in Dawson County, the board added one more condition for single men." Cal's jaw flexed. "Say it again." "You have 12 months from the date of filing to be legally married," the clerk repeated. "If you remain unmarried after that, the claim reverts to the county and will be reassigned. You've been on file 11 months and 3 weeks. That means you've got—" He glanced at the calendar. 7 days. 7 days. Cal blew out a slow, lethal breath. He'd spent 15 brutal years on the plains, tracking buffalo herds, sleeping on frozen ground, watching entire species vanish beneath rifle fire. Every cent he'd earned, every scar carved into his body, had led to this place, a stretch of Nebraska prairie he'd already broken with his own 2 hands, a small cabin of hand-hewn logs, a corral, a well, fresh fence posts marching across the horizon like a promise. And now a gaggle of old men in town were telling him he could lose it all because he didn't have a wife. It was insane. It was the law, or at least it was the rule here. Outside, the main street of Dawsonville buzzed with gossip. People had already seen the notice in the paper. They knew about the big man out on the homestead who'd taken too long to settle down. Some snickered. Some shook their heads. Some watched with a strange hunger, wondering who'd be desperate enough to take him. Cal strode out of the land office, slamming the door behind him. He stood on the boardwalk, fists clenched, staring at the wide, empty horizon that held everything he owned. He didn't want a wife. He didn't trust marriage. But he'd be damned if he let anyone strip his land away over a line of ink on a document. So he did the only thing that made sense to a man who'd always solved problems with grit and blunt force. He put an ad in the Dawsonville Gazette. Wanted, a wife for 1 year. Paper marriage only. $1,000 upon completion. No romance, no expectations. By the time Octavia Tavi Blackwood stepped off the stagecoach with a worn valise and hope burning through her shame, everyone in town knew she'd come to answer it. If you're listening to this, tell me in the comments, where in the world are you hearing this story from right now? The Dawsonville law office was usually quiet, the sort of place where dust gathered in the corners and time moved slowly. But on the morning Octavia Tavy Blackwood arrived, the entire room felt charged, like something had shifted the air itself. Cal Bridger stood with his arms crossed over his chest, a wall of mountain-born muscle, waiting for whoever would walk through that door to claim the most unusual job in the territory. He expected a grifter. He expected a scared widow. He expected someone older, practical, maybe hardened by life. He did not expect her. The door creaked open, and in stepped a young woman with a worn leather valise and eyes the color of storm clouds. She was soft-bodied, round-faced, full-figured in a way that made the room feel suddenly smaller. Her dress was simple and faded, but clean. Her dark hair was braided over one shoulder, thick as a rope. Her cheeks were flushed with nerves and maybe hunger. Her voice was gentle when she spoke, but steady. "Mr. Bridger, I'm here about the advertisement." Cal stared, not because she was fat. He'd seen hundreds of shapes of humanity on the frontier. No, the shock came from something else entirely. Her eyes, they were kind and wounded and far braver than he expected. "You came alone?" he asked, still unable to mask his surprise. "Yes, sir," Tavy breathed, clutching the strap of her valise. "I don't have anyone to come with me." He felt that more deeply than he wanted to admit. The lawyer cleared his throat. "Shall we get started?" They sat across from each other at a wooden table stacked with paperwork. Cal watched her as she signed each page. Her hands were small but calloused, hands that had worked, hands that had endured. He wasn't the only one observing. Dawsonville was a nosy town, and the windows of the law office were lined with curious faces. Women whispered behind gloved hands. Men smirked. "That him? That big mountain brute? And that's his bride? He must be desperate. She must be starving." Tavy heard every word. Her back stiffened, her breath hitched, her cheeks heated with shame. Cal hated the sound of their laughter more than he'd ever hated a winter storm. He leaned forward. "You understand what this is, right? It's a business arrangement. Nothing more." "Yes," Tavy whispered. "No expectations, no obligations. We live separately. After 1 year, you leave with the money." "Yes, sir." He studied her face closely, round, sweet, flushed with embarrassment, and something uncomfortable tugged in his chest. "Why'd you answer the ad?" he asked, softer now. Tavy swallowed. "I needed a way out." "Out of what?" She hesitated. Her fingers twisted the fabric of her dress. "My employer," she finally said. "His name is Harrington. I was a housemaid for him for 5 years. He hit me, starved me, worked me near to death. He said girls like me aren't worth feeding unless we earn it." Cal's jaw clenched hard. "He kept my wages," Tavy continued, voice trembling. "All 5 years. I ran when he passed out drunk. If I go back, he'll hurt me." A cold fury rose inside Cal, the kind that came from years of seeing the worst of men on the frontier. "You won't go back," he said. "Not while you're under my name." She looked up sharply. "You mean that?" "I don't say what I don't mean." For the first time, she gave a small smile. It wasn't big or confident, just soft, fragile, real. The lawyer finished filing the marriage documents. "Well, that's that. You two are legally wed." The room fell silent. Cal felt a strange weight settle on his shoulders. He'd taken buffalo by the hundreds, faced storms that killed lesser men, survived winter nights when the cold cut marrow from bone. But this felt like stepping off a cliff. Tavy stood, smoothing her skirt. "Thank you for choosing me, Mr. Bridger. I know I'm not the kind of woman men want." Her voice cracked. He didn't understand the ache that punched through his ribs. "You'll stay in the cabin," Cal said gruffly. "I'll sleep in the barn." Tavy blinked. "But the barn is freezing." "I've slept colder." "That doesn't mean you should," she whispered. He turned away. "It's better this way." They walked out into the bright Nebraska sunlight as husband and wife, two strangers side by side, with a whole town staring. Tavy looked at the ground. Cal looked at her. Neither realized that 1 year was already far too long to pretend, The ride back to Cal's homestead was long, dusty, and silent. Tavy sat side saddle on the smaller of Cal's two horses, clutching the reins with both hands. She tried to look straight ahead, to ignore the growing ache in her thighs, to hide the sting in her eyes. But the prairie wind was sharp, and tears threatened with every breath. Cal glanced at her from time to time. She was not delicate, she was not fragile, but she was hurting. He recognized the signs, the way she held her shoulders tight, the way she pressed her lips together to keep them from trembling. He'd seen the same look on wounded animals trying not to show weakness. When the cabin came into view, Tavy's breath caught. It wasn't much. A one-room log house with a stone chimney and a porch just barely large enough for a rocking chair. But it was peaceful. The land spread golden and broad around it, quiet in a way she had never known in her life. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Cal grunted, dismounting. "It's functional." They unloaded supplies in silence. Tavy stood by awkwardly until Cal nodded toward the door. "You can go in," he said. "Make yourself comfortable." She hesitated. "Are you sure? You don't want to show me around?" Cal froze, caught off guard. No one had ever asked him for a tour of anything. "It's a cabin," he said stiffly. "4 walls, roof, bed, stove. You'll figure it out." Tavy lowered her gaze. "Yes, sir." He hated the "sir," hated how small she looked when she said it. When she disappeared inside, he dragged his bedroll out to the barn, muttering at himself. This wasn't supposed to be complicated. It was supposed to be paperwork, a year-long contract. Convenient, cold, safe. So why had seeing her flinch at the word functional felt like a punch to the chest? Inside the cabin, Tavy stood in the quiet, taking in the space. The floorboards were dusty. The shelves were cluttered with tools, empty tins, and half-finished projects. A heavy buffalo coat was thrown across a chair. The stove was cold and full of ash. It was a man's house, a lonely man's house. She set her valise down, rolled up her sleeves, and got to work. By dusk, she had swept the floors, scrubbed the stove, organized the shelves, and washed the dishes piled in the basin. She even found dried herbs in the cupboard and used them to stew potatoes and onions into something that smelled, miraculously, like real food. When Cal stepped into the cabin that night, he froze. The air was warm, the light was soft, and dinner was simmering on the stove. Tavy turned, hands clasped nervously. "I hope you don't mind. I cleaned a little." He stared at the room, dumbfounded. "I didn't ask you to," he said. "I know," she murmured, "but it needed doing." He opened his mouth to argue, to remind her of the rules, to say something gruff and distant. What came out instead was, "Smells good." Tavy blinked. "It's just potatoes and onions." "Smells good," he repeated. She served him quietly, watching anxiously as he took the first bite. Cal chewed once, twice, then set down his fork. He struggled for the word. He didn't use it often. "Good." A warmth flickered across her face, a hesitant smile, barely there, but enough to soften her features. "I'm glad," she whispered. They ate in silence, but it was a different kind of silence, warm, gentle, almost tentative. After dinner, Cal stood and reached for his coat. "I'll leave you to rest. I'll be in the barn." Tavy stepped forward before she could think better of it. "It's cold out, Cal," she said softly. "Too cold." "I've survived worse," he muttered. "That doesn't mean you should," she whispered again, the same way she had at the lawyer's office. He looked at her, really looked at her, her round cheeks, flushed from cooking, her small hands wringing her apron, her soft body framed by firelight, her eyes full of worry for him, not fear, worry. No one had worried for him in years. "I'll be fine," he said, but his voice lacked its earlier conviction. She hesitated, then nodded. "Good night, Mr. Bridger." He hesitated, too. "Cal," he corrected. She smiled, small, shy, sincere. "Good night, Cal." He stood outside in the freezing air for a long moment after closing the door. Something had changed, and he didn't know how to stop it. By the end of the first week, the cabin no longer felt like Cal's. It felt like theirs. Tavy moved through the small space with a quiet grace, sweeping, cooking, mending torn shirts, humming softly under her breath. She wasn't trying to make it warm. She simply was warm, and that warmth seeped into the walls, into the floorboards, into him. Cal tried to ignore it, tried to remember the rules, tried to keep his distance, but it was hard to keep distance from someone who kept saving your life in small, invisible ways. It started with the breakfast she cooked every morning, eggs he hadn't known how to stop overcooking, biscuits he'd never had patience to knead properly, and the way she set his plate down first, not out of duty, but out of genuine care. Then came the mended clothes. Cal had worn the same 2 shirts for 3 years, both full of holes. One evening, he came in from chopping wood and found them washed, patched, and folded neatly on his bed. "You didn't need to do that," he muttered. "I know," Tavy said softly, "but it was getting cold, and you shouldn't go through winter dressed like a ghost." He didn't know what to say to that. The next day, she insisted on learning to hitch the wagon, to feed the cattle, even to shovel manure beside him. Her hair came loose from the braid, curls sticking to her forehead, but she worked with stubborn determination. "You're doing great," he said without thinking. She went scarlet, nearly dropping the pitchfork. He pretended not to notice how pleased she was. One night, while Tavy was tending the fire, a gust of wind blew the cabin door open. Cal stepped inside, covered in snow from chopping logs, and stopped cold. Tavy was kneeling by the fire, hair down, wearing a simple cotton nightdress. Nothing improper, nothing revealing, but something about her, the gentle curve of her shoulders, the way the firelight painted her skin in gold, hit him like a blow. "Cal," she breathed, "you're freezing." Before he could protest, she grabbed a blanket and wrapped it around his shoulders. Her fingers brushed the back of his neck, warm, so warm, and he felt it in places he'd locked away years ago. "You can't keep working after dark," she scolded softly. "It's dangerous and cold." "You worry too much," he muttered, though his voice came out rougher than he intended. She gave him a look, gentle but firm. Someone has to. No one had ever spoken to him like that, soft, concerned, unafraid, not ordering him, not fearing him, simply caring. He didn't know what to do with that. So he stood stiffly by the fire, letting her fuss over him, trying not to stare as her hands brushed close to his chest. That night he lay awake in the barn, listening to the wind howl through the slats. He could still smell her, soap and wood smoke and cinnamon. He could still feel her fingers on his skin. He knew he wouldn't survive a winter sleeping in the cold. He knew she knew it too. The next evening she brought him a quilt, one she'd sewn herself from scraps she found in the cabin. "I made this for you," she said quietly, "just in case." He lifted the quilt. It was heavy, warm, stitched with precise, loving hands. "You'll freeze in the house without this," he argued. "I have blankets. You—" "Don't," He gripped the quilt too tightly, jaw clenching. "You're supposed to be here for a year," he said. "Just a year. You shouldn't—" "Care for you?" she finished softly. "I can't help that." Something hot and dangerous twisted deep in his chest. "You should," he whispered. "It makes this harder." "What does?" she asked. He couldn't say it. Not yet. The words clawed at his throat, but pride, fear, and disbelief tangled them. Instead, he turned away, but Tavy wasn't done softening him. One morning, while Cal was repairing the corral fence, she approached with a basket of bread and cheese. He watched her walk toward him, her soft curves bouncing gently, her cheeks flushed from the cold, her braids swinging behind her. She set the basket down and handed him a piece of bread. Their fingers brushed. A spark shot through him, sharp, immediate. He dropped the bread. Tavy startled. "Did I—" "No," he growled. "It's not you." He picked it up again, dusted it off, and took a bite. She watched him with concern. "You seem tense lately," she whispered. "I'm fine," he said too quickly. But he wasn't. She was breaking through his walls, one small kindness at a time, and he didn't know how to stop wanting more. She sat beside him on the fence rail, legs dangling. "I like it here, Cal," she said quietly. "It's peaceful, safe, and you've been kinder to me than anyone ever has." He turned to her, slowly, cautiously. "You deserve peace," he said. She looked down at her hands. "Peace doesn't usually include a husband who sleeps in a barn." His breath hitched. "I told you, it's better this way." "For who?" she whispered. He didn't answer. That night, Tavy found him sitting by the barn door, staring up at the sky. "Cal?" she asked, stepping closer. "What's wrong?" He didn't look at her. "You've made the cabin too warm." She blinked. "Warm is bad? For me?" His voice was low, almost pained. "It's dangerous." She slowly sat beside him. "Why?" He turned to her then, and she saw it. The fear, the longing, the exhaustion of a man who'd never let himself hope for anything gentle. "Because if I step back inside that warmth," he whispered, "I won't ever want to leave." Tavy's breath caught. He looked away sharply. "This is supposed to be temporary, a contract." Tavy hesitated, then spoke with trembling courage. "Does it still feel temporary to you?" Silence, long, heavy, fragile. Finally, he whispered, "No." The barn felt too small, the world felt too big, and between them, something enormous shifted. Tavy placed a gentle hand over his. "Then stop pretending it is." Cal's heart pounded so hard he heard it in his ears. He didn't pull away, not this time. Spring melted into early summer, and Cal's homestead flourished. Wheat pushed green shoots through the soil. The cattle grazed contentedly. The cabin glowed each night with lamplight, laughter, and the quiet, tender rhythm of two people learning to breathe in the same space. But peace never lasts on the frontier, and Tavy's past had teeth. It happened on a hot afternoon, the kind where the air wavered above the fields. Cal was splitting logs near the barn when he saw a dust cloud rising on the horizon, a wagon, coming fast. His instinct sharpened, the same instinct that had saved him from ambushes and stampedes and winter blizzards. Something was wrong. "Tavy!" he called. She stepped out of the cabin, wiping her hands on her apron. "What is it?" "Get inside," he said. His tone, low, deadly, made her freeze. The wagon didn't slow. It barreled straight toward them until Cal stepped forward, hand resting on the butt of his revolver. The wagon screeched to a stop. Out stumbled a man, red-faced, sweating, his vest strained over a belly that shook with every breath. His beady eyes landed on Tavy, and his lips curled into a twisted smile. "Tavy girl," he sneered, "thought you could run forever?" Tavy went white as chalk. "Harrington?" Cal's hand tightened around his revolver. So this was the man who'd starved her, who'd beaten her, the man she'd escaped from with nothing but courage and hope. Harrington continued, swaggering closer. "You stole from me, girl. $500 gone from my lockbox. I'm here to take you back and get every cent I'm owed." "I never stole anything," Tavy whispered. "You withheld my wages for 5 years. I only took what I earned." "Liar!" Harrington spat. He reached for her, face twisted with rage. Cal stepped between them so fast even Tavy gasped. "You touch her," he said, voice a low growl, "and I'll bury you in your own wagon." Harrington surged forward. "She's my property. I paid for her room, her food." "She's my wife," Cal said. The words were simple, but the way he said them, solid, final, unshakable, made Tavy's knees weaken. Harrington laughed loudly. "Your wife? That fat thing?" He snorted. "You must be desperate." Cal didn't flinch. He simply grabbed Harrington by the vest, lifted him off the ground like he weighed nothing, and slammed him against the side of the wagon. Harrington squealed. "Let me make this real clear," Cal said softly, a whisper more terrifying than any shout. "She belongs to no one, not you, not any man, but she's under my roof, and I protect what's mine." "Yours?" Harrington sneered. "Come on now, Bridger. A real man doesn't take in a—" The insult never finished. Cal punched him, once, hard. Harrington crumpled like wet laundry onto the dirt, groaning and clutching his jaw. Tavy gasped. "Cal, you'll kill him." "He deserves worse," Cal growled. He stalked forward, ready to haul the man up for another blow, but Tavy grabbed his arm. "Cal," she whispered, "please." Her voice, gentle, pleading, full of the softness he'd spent months pretending he didn't crave, stopped him cold. He turned to her, breath harsh, eyes blazing. "He hurt you." "I know," she said softly, "but you don't need to become a monster because of him." Her hand on his arm was small but steady, and it pulled him back from the edge. Harrington scrambled to his knees, coughing. "You can't stop me. I'll go to the sheriff. I'll say she stole from me. I'll swear it in court." "You do that," Cal said, "and I'll swear in court that you beat her, starved her, and worked her without pay." "She's lying," Harrington sputtered. Cal didn't break eye contact. "And I don't lie." A long, trembling silence settled. Harrington's confidence faltered. Cal stepped closer. "Get off my land." Harrington crawled to the wagon, terrified. "This isn't over," he hissed as he climbed in. "I'll be back with the law." "Bring whoever you want," Cal said, "but bring a coffin, too." The wagon tore away in a cloud of dust. When he finally turned back toward Tavy, she was shaking. "Are you all right?" he asked. She nodded, but tears spilled down her cheeks anyway. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't want him to find me. I didn't want to cause trouble for you." Cal stepped forward, gently tilting her chin up so she had to meet his eyes. "You're not trouble," he said softly. "You're my wife." Her breath hitched. "But only on paper." He swallowed hard. "Tavy, it hasn't felt like paper for a long time." She covered her mouth with her hand as a sob escaped. "Cal," she whispered, "I don't want this marriage to be fake anymore." He pulled her into his arms, slowly, reverently, as though she were something precious he feared might break. "It isn't," he said against her hair. Not to me. She clung to him. Then why do you sleep in the barn? He froze. It's what we agreed, he said finally, and I didn't want to pressure you. Tavy leaned back, cupping his rough cheeks in her small hands. Cal Bridger, she whispered, trembling, you could never pressure me? He kissed her, slow at first, soft, careful, then deeper, warmer, needier, the kind of kiss that rewrote the rules they'd made, the kind that turned a contract into something holy. When they broke apart, both breathless, Tavy whispered, stay with me, tonight, and every night after. Cal's voice was raw. I will. But before he could carry her inside, the sound of a horn echoed across the prairie, a warning horn, the kind the sheriff blew when he was coming with a posse. Cal stiffened. They're coming, he said. Harrington brought them. Tavy grabbed his arm, fear flooding her eyes. What are we going to do? Cal reached for his rifle, jaw set like stone. We're going to fight, he said, because I'm done pretending you're temporary. The horn echoed again across the prairie, long, shrill, unmistakable. Tavy's blood ran cold. Cal placed himself in front of her without thinking, broad shoulders blocking the horizon. His stance shifted, grounding into the earth like a boulder planted by God himself. He scanned the ridge line with a predator's vigilance. They're riding hard, he murmured. Harrington didn't waste a minute. Tavy swallowed, forcing her voice out. How many? Cal narrowed his eyes. 6 horses, maybe 7. Sheriff's in the lead. Her breath caught. Cal, they'll believe him. Men like Harrington always get believed. Not on my land. Cal's hand tightened around his rifle. And not about my wife. The last words hit her like an arrow, sharp, certain, beautiful. Get inside, Cal said firmly. Stay behind the window. Keep the door barred. I won't hide while you face them alone, Tavy whispered. Cal turned then, slowly, like he was afraid anything abrupt might shatter her. His eyes softened. Tavy, if something happened to you, if something happens to you, I won't survive it, she cut in. A beat of silence, then another. The horses thundered closer. Cal touched her cheek, thumb brushing a tear she didn't realize had fallen. You stay behind me, no matter what. She nodded. They stood together on the porch as the posse drew near. Sheriff Dunley, 2 deputies, Harrington slumped in the saddle with a bandaged jaw, and 3 local ranchers likely bribed with whiskey and promises. Bridger, Sheriff Dunley shouted, step away from the woman. Cal didn't move. Sheriff, you're trespassing. We've come for a criminal, Dunley said. That girl stole $500. She stole nothing, Cal replied. She reclaimed her wages. Wages? Harrington yelled, voice slurred from the swelling. She's a liar and a thief. Cal's jaw flexed dangerously. Tavy stepped forward, gripping Cal's sleeve. Sheriff, please, let me explain. Quiet, Dunley barked at her. You speak when spoken to? Cal's voice turned deadly. Don't you raise your voice at my wife. That made the sheriff pause. Harrington spat. She ain't his wife. Nobody'd take her. Cal lowered his rifle, holding it loosely by his thigh, not aiming, not threatening, just proving he could raise it faster than any of them could blink. We are legally married, Cal said. Filed, stamped, witnessed. Dunley frowned. Is that true? Harrington scoffed. If he married that cow, it's because he's hiding something. Cal's gaze darkened so fast the deputies shifted uneasily. Tavy spoke, voice trembling but strong. Sheriff, Mr. Harrington kept all the wages I earned, 5 years. He beat me, starved me. He refused to pay me even $1. The deputies exchanged glances. Dunley scratched his chin. "You got any proof, Miss Blackwood?" "I'm Mrs. Bridger now," she said softly. Cal's chest tightened. She continued, "I have scars, witnesses in town who saw the bruises, and I wrote down every month he withheld my pay." She pulled a folded paper from her apron, a desperate record she'd kept in secret all those years. Cal hadn't known she carried it, hadn't known she'd lived 5 years praying someone might one day believe her. Dunley unfolded it, scanning the lines, his brow furrowed deeper with each month listed. "That's a lot of missing wages," he muttered. Harrington roared, "It's fake! She forged it!" Cal finally stepped off the porch. He moved slowly, deliberately, every muscle coiled. "No," Cal said, "you forged a life from her suffering, and now you're done." The sheriff looked between them, weighing fear against truth. Finally, he exhaled, "Bridger, I can't arrest her. Not with this record. Looks to me like Harrington owes her money." Harrington shrieked, "You useless, donkey-brained fool! I demand—" Cal grabbed him by the collar and yanked him off his horse. Harrington hit the dirt with a squeal. Cal bent low, voice quiet, but terrifying. "You ever come near her again, I'll bury you so deep the worms won't find you." The sheriff didn't intervene. He didn't even blink. Harrington scrambled back onto his wagon, humiliated, furious, and defeated. The posse turned and rode away. Silence swallowed the homestead. Tavy sagged with relief, but Cal was already at her side, holding her before she could fall. "You did it," she whispered against his chest. "You protected me." Cal pressed his lips to her temple. "I'll always protect you." She pulled back to look at him, eyes shining. "Cal, do you really mean always?" He brushed a tear from her cheek. "I meant it the day I married you. I just didn't know it yet." Her breath stilled. Then she kissed him, softly at first, then with all the fear, longing, and hope she'd held inside for years. When they parted, Cal whispered, voice breaking, "Come on, wife, let's go home." Night settled over the homestead like a soft blanket, the sky a deep velvet scattered with cold silver stars. Inside the cabin, the world felt warmer than it ever had before. Tavy lit the oil lamp, its golden glow flickering across the wooden walls, casting gentle halos on everything it touched. Cal closed the door behind them, sliding the iron bolt into place. The simple sound of metal meeting wood felt like a vow. Nothing and no one would cross that threshold to harm her again. For the first time since arriving months ago, Tavy let herself breathe freely. Cal watched her, arms folded loosely, the lines of worry still lingering on his face. She approached him slowly, her fingers hesitating before brushing his sleeve. "Are you all right?" she whispered. Cal's breath caught. Tavy had spent years asking that question to people who never cared about the answer. But now, standing before him, she meant every syllable. He nodded once. "I am, because you're safe." Tavy smiled, soft and fragile. "I never expected any of this. I came here thinking I'd be nothing but paperwork to you. And I thought I was hiring a stranger who'd disappear after a year." Cal shook his head slowly. "But you became the reason this place feels alive." Her cheeks warmed. She turned slightly, staring at the dancing firelight. "I used to dream of a home, not a big one, just a place where no one yelled, no one hit me, where I wasn't a burden." "Tavy," he murmured, stepping closer, "even after we married, I didn't think I deserved anything good. I thought if I worked hard enough, kept my head down, you wouldn't regret choosing me." Her voice cracked. Cal reached out, lifting her chin gently so she would meet his gaze. "You listen to me," he said quietly. "I don't regret a single moment you've been here, not one." Tears welled in her eyes. Cal exhaled shakily as if steadying his courage. This land, this house, it was just wood and dirt. It had no meaning until you filled it with warmth. Her breath trembled. "I don't want you to leave when the year ends," he said. "I don't want you in another town, another life, another man's home. I want you here, with me." He reached into his pocket, not for a ring, not yet, but for a small carved wooden bird, the first thing he had ever made with his bare hands after arriving here alone. The wings were imperfect, the tail uneven. It was raw, honest, human. He placed it in her hands. "I carved this years ago," he said softly, "trying to make something that felt alive so the house wouldn't feel so empty. But it never worked." He swallowed hard. "Because I wasn't waiting for a carving. I was waiting for you." Tavy's tears spilled freely as she clutched the tiny bird to her chest. Cal cupped her face, his thumbs brushing her cheeks. "You're safe here," he whispered. "It's your home now, if you'll have it." She let out a broken, beautiful laugh, half sob, half joy. "Cal, I already chose this place. I chose it the first day you let me stay, and I choose you." He kissed her then, slow and gentle, a promise sealed in firelight. Outside, the wind swept across the wheat fields. Inside, two souls finally stopped running. If Tavy and Cal's story reached you tonight, if it warmed you, steadied you, or reminded you that love can rise from the unlikeliest soil, thank you for listening. Stories like theirs aren't really about ranches or frontier laws. They're about the fierce, fragile hope that someone might see us fully and choose us anyway. Where are you listening from? A quiet room, a long road, another corner of the world? Wherever you are, I'm grateful you're here. And if you still believe in love, born from hardship, in tenderness, strong enough to rebuild a life, stay close. The next story is waiting for you.